My friends, there are moments in history when the ordinary scaffolding of our lives trembles, and the familiar walls of our routines are shaken until they no longer feel safe. These are the days when what we call normal collapses under the weight of eternity. And it is in such days that the voice of God breaks through, not in thunder only, but in warning, in summons, and in a sobering declaration. Chosen one, there will be an urgent lockdown. Do not think of this lockdown as mere bricks and mortar, as if governments had ordered doors to be shut or markets closed. No, this is a heavenly decree, a time when the unseen realm draws a line, halting the restless shuffle of human ambition, silencing the loud machinery of distraction, and calling every soul to stand still before the face of God. Why? The 15th, the 16th, the 17th of August. Not because the calendar itself is holy, but because time is the vessel of his warning. Just as a surgeon announces the hour of an operation, or a judge appoints the day of trial, so the Almighty marks days in which men and women are required to awaken, to cease their wandering, and to reckon with him. The urgency is not in the date alone, but in the message it bears. Lock down your heart, lock down your eyes, lock down your steps from the paths that lead to ruin. For years, the world has sped onward, faster trade, louder voices, endless spectacles of pleasure, and yet in all of it, our hearts grow emptier. We are like children chasing shadows, laughing as we run, but unaware of the cliff's edge waiting ahead. An urgent lockdown is mercy disguised as interruption. It is the stern hand of a father pulling his child back from a blazing fire. It is not cruelty, but compassion when heaven bars the way to destruction. To ignore such a command is to mistake the warning bell for an inconvenience, to silence the very alarm that was sent to save. So what must the chosen one do? The answer is not in panic, nor in gathering possessions, nor in grasping after what will soon wither. It is in stillness, it is in confession, it is in the quiet returning of the heart to its Maker. When the streets grow silent, let the soul speak. When doors are shut, let prayer open. When the world is paused, let eternity be heard. The lockdown is not a punishment to those who listen, it is a preparation. Just as winter seals the earth so that seeds may rest for spring, so these days are given that souls may be sifted, strengthened, and made ready for what lies beyond. Let no one imagine they have endless time. History is a river that does not turn back. Every moment carries us further downstream, nearer to the mouth where time meets eternity. To squander the appointed days is to treat lightly what heaven treats as urgent. Chosen one, if you hear this warning, then you are already counted among those called to prepare. Do not ask, why me? Ask instead, why now? The answer is simple, because God, in his unsearchable wisdom, has marked this hour for you to awaken, to close the gates against sin, and to open the door to his presence. The urgent lockdown is coming. The 15th, the 16th, the 17th of August are not mere numbers on a page, but a summons, a trumpet note disguised as silence. He who hears will understand. He who obeys will endure. And when the days have passed and the world opens again, those who kept watch will rise not in fear, but in strength, like lanterns lit in the dark, waiting for the dawn. When we hear the word lockdown, our minds often race to thoughts of restriction, confinement, and loss of freedom. Yet what God announces is never shallow or without meaning, for his decrees are not like the shifting orders of men, but like pillars set in eternity. An urgent lockdown from heaven is not about keeping you away from marketplaces, jobs, or roads. It is about awakening the heart from its slumber. It is a summons, a divine interruption that stops the endless motion of human distraction, so that the soul may turn its gaze back to the one who fashioned it. In such a moment, the truest meaning of freedom is revealed, for freedom is not in the liberty to do all things, but in the strength to choose the right things. When God says there will be an urgent lockdown, He is not binding your steps to punish, but binding your steps to protect, so that the snares of sin and destruction do not devour you in the haste of your own running. Every age has its warnings, moments when eternity interrupts time and shakes humanity awake from complacency. Noah's generation thought him mad when he built the ark. They mocked the idea that judgment could come in water. Yet the ark was a lockdown, a divinely appointed shelter, separating life from death. So too, in this present hour, God calls the chosen ones to enter into a sacred stillness, to withdraw from the noise of the world, and recognize that the greatest battles are not fought in the streets or in governments, but in the secret places of the heart. The urgent lockdown is a spiritual arc, and only those who heed the call will understand its mercy. It is easy for mankind to despise interruption. We are creatures who worship momentum. We hate to be stopped. But what if the very motion we crave is carrying us toward ruin? What if the songs we dance to are leading us into chains? God halts us not because He delights in silence, but because He desires to awaken our ears to the music of heaven. The lockdown becomes then a divine summons, a pause not of despair but of mercy. It is as though the author of time has pressed his hand upon the page of history, refusing to let the story move forward until his children lift their eyes and see the handwriting upon the wall. To awaken is to remember who you are and whose you are. Too long have hearts wandered, distracted by pleasures that corrode and ambitions that crumble. Too long have eyes been fixed on shadows while ignoring the great light. The lockdown is God's voice saying, pause your chasing, pause your endless building, pause your thirst for vanity, and remember the eternal things that cannot be shaken. Awaken to righteousness, awaken to repentance, awaken to the truth that what is unseen is more lasting than what is seen. And in that awakening, preparation begins. Preparation is not the storing of food or the counting of coins, but the cleansing of the inner chamber. It is a readiness of soul, a trimming of lamps, a filling of oil before the midnight cry. When God calls for an urgent lockdown, He is giving His chosen ones the opportunity to prepare for the days that follow, to be anchored when storms rage, and to be found faithful when the judge appears. This is why the lockdown is urgent, because eternity will not delay its unfolding. Time is a river that flows onward, and these marked days are gifts in which to halt the drift, to set anchors deep, and to prepare for what cannot be postponed. There are times when silence speaks louder than 1,000 voices, and stillness carries a weight that motion cannot bear. The urgent call from heaven is not to rush, not to build taller towers, not to gather more possessions, but to be still. Stillness is not idleness. It is the strength to quiet the storm within, to still the racing thoughts and the endless appetites that pull the soul in every direction. It is the posture of humility before the Creator, the recognition that one cannot save oneself by effort, nor overcome darkness by the noise of striving. In the stillness, the soul begins to hear whispers that were drowned out by clamor, the whispers of eternity, the voice of conscience, the tender yet unyielding call of God. But stillness alone is not enough, for silence without confession becomes nothing more than an empty pause. True stillness births honesty, and honesty brings forth confession. To confess is to open the hidden places, to allow light into the corners where shadows have long dwelt. It is not merely a listing of wrongs, but the tearing down of pretenses, the breaking of pride that insists we are whole without God. Confession unclogs the wellspring of the heart. It is the unlocking of a prison door that has long kept the soul bound. It is the courage to say, I have wandered, I have failed. I have loved lesser things more than the one who made me. And in such words, though they may sting the tongue, there is a strange freedom, for confession is the act that pulls poison from the bloodstream of the spirit. Then comes prayer, not as ritual, not as mere words echoing in the air, but as communion. Prayer is the breath of the awakened soul, the dialogue between dust and divinity, the bridge that crosses the chasm of sin and finds footing in the presence of the eternal. When the doors to sin are shut, prayer becomes the open window through which heaven's light streams in. Prayer is not about the length of words or the eloquence of speech, but about the posture of the heart. It is the lifting of the eyes to the hills, the turning of the face toward the one who alone can sustain. In prayer, burdens find a resting place, fears are unravelled, and hope is rekindled. This triad, stillness, confession, and prayer is the true response to the urgent lockdown. The world may respond with fear, with panic, with the hoarding of goods and the grasping for control, but the chosen ones are summoned to a different posture. They are called not to stockpile, but to surrender, not to shout, but to listen, not to run, but to kneel. For in kneeling they rise higher than any throne of men. In listening they hear truths the world ignores. In surrendering they gain the victory that no sword can win. Closing the doors to sin is not a mere metaphor but a living act of discipline. It is refusing the whispers that call you back into old patterns, refusing the temptations that once bound you, refusing the lies that masquerade as freedom but chain the soul in deeper bondage. To shut the door is to declare no entry. To every voice that opposes the truth, to place a seal on the threshold of the heart that says, "This belongs to God alone." And when those doors are sealed, the heart can finally open, not to the world's illusions, but to the eternal reality of God's presence. An open heart is the soil in which faith grows, the chamber where peace reigns, the sanctuary where the Spirit dwells. It is here, in this posture of openness, that life is no longer measured by possessions or status, but by the richness of communion with the divine. Mercy often comes to us in garments we do not recognize. We expect mercy to be gentle, sweet, and soft like rain upon thirsty ground. Yet there are times when mercy arrives like a hammer, breaking the chains we had grown accustomed to wearing. When God appoints certain days and declares them as set apart, it is not to burden but to shield, not to rob but to ready. Interruption is the language of heaven when men are deaf to whispers. When life flows endlessly in its patterns of pursuit, ambition, and pleasure, few pause to consider eternity. So mercy intervenes. Mercy steps into the rhythm, cuts across the familiar, and halts the momentum that would otherwise carry us toward disaster. These days, marked and sealed by God's decree, are not ordinary days. They bear the weight of eternity hidden within them. The world may look upon them as simple dates on a calendar, yet in the unseen realm they are appointed as windows of opportunity, as thresholds where heaven bends low to reach earth. The chosen ones must see beyond the interruption itself and discern the kindness hidden in it. A parent who seizes a child by the arm to keep him from running into traffic does not act harshly but mercifully, and so too God seizes the flow of time to awaken those he loves. What feels like disruption is preservation. What feels like loss is protection. What feels like confinement is preparation for a greater release yet to come. It is easy to curse interruption because it offends our sense of control. We imagine ourselves masters of time, builders of futures, architects of destiny. But these appointed days remind us that time belongs not to us, but to Him who spoke it into existence. The sun rises and sets at His command. The seasons turn because His hand ordains it, and even the days marked on human calendars bend to His authority. To rebel against such interruption is to fight against mercy itself, to close one's eyes against the light of dawn, and insist on stumbling in darkness. Yet to receive it, to yield to it, is to enter into a rhythm greater than our own, a rhythm that preserves, shelters, and prepares. Preparation is the heart of these days. Mercy does not only stop us from danger, it equips us for endurance. Just as soldiers are trained before battle, just as farmers prepare soil before harvest, so the chosen ones are readied in these appointed pauses. The interruption is not an end but a beginning, a time to strip away what is unnecessary and strengthen what must endure. In the silence of these days, the heart is tested, purified, and aligned with eternal purposes. Without such preparation, the weight of what lies ahead would crush us, but with it we are made steady, able to stand when storms arise and trials descend. The world cannot see the value of such mercy, for it counts only what is lost in interruption. It laments the halted plans, the silenced gatherings, the paused ambitions. But heaven rejoices over what is gained, the sharpening of faith, the awakening of conscience, the renewal of strength, the deepening of trust. These are treasures that moth and rust cannot corrupt, treasures hidden in days that appear barren, but are secretly full. What lies ahead requires more than human strength, more than shallow optimism, more than fleeting pleasure. It demands souls anchored in truth, hearts fortified in trust, minds clear with discernment, and spirits awake with vigilance. This is why the appointed days come as they do, clothed in interruption, framed in urgency, yet filled with mercy,